Whenever the Navy rolls out a new aircraft carrier, the talk always follows the same pattern. People focus on the obvious things: the ship's size, its top speed. How many fighter jets can park on the deck? These facts look great in photos and videos, but they are not why aircraft carriers shape wars. Carriers do not win because they can move quickly. They win because they can keep working without slowing down. The newest U.S. carrier, USS Gerald R. carries a weapon that almost never makes headlines. You will not find it sitting on the flight deck. It does not glow. It does not fire. It does not launch anything dramatic into the sky. You could watch the ship all day and never notice it. But once you understand what it is, the entire idea of modern sea warfare starts to change. First, let's be honest about cost. The Ford-class program is expensive, and everyone knows it. The ship itself is often described as a $13 billion carrier. When you add research, testing, development, and system integration, the full total climbs even higher. Critics point at the price tag and ask the obvious question: why spend that much? But that debate often misses the real point. The Navy was not paying for a bigger version of older carriers. It was paying for a carrier that acts differently. Because even though aircraft carriers have always looked unstoppable, their true power was always limited by something much less exciting than missiles or storms. They were limited by time. Every aircraft that launches must come back. Every aircraft that lands must be handled fast. It must be refueled, rearmed, inspected, moved to the right spot, then launched again. Bombs and missiles must be carried across the ship. Elevators must move heavy loads between decks. The flight deck must be cleared, reused, and reorganized again and again. Over hours and days, these steps decide how much real air power a carrier can deliver. This cycle has a name: Sortie Generation. Sortie Generation is the heartbeat of a carrier. It sets the limit on how much pressure the ship can apply. A carrier may carry dozens of aircraft, but if it launches them slowly, it becomes predictable. If it can keep launching aircraft hour after hour, it becomes suffocating. It becomes a machine that never stops. That is why the Navy did not ask the Ford class a simple question like, how fast can it sail? Nuclear propulsion already answered that. It can stay at sea without routine fuel stops. They also did not ask, how many aircraft can we cram onto the deck? That problem was solved decades ago. Instead, they asked a much colder question. How fast can the ship reload itself? How quickly can it recover aircraft, turn them around, and send them back into combat without taking long pauses? And how long can it keep that rhythm before machines break down and crews hit their limits? Those questions shaped almost every major design choice of the Ford class. It explains why the ship looks familiar from far away, but behaves very differently once you study how it works. In modern war, tempo is everything. Tempo decides who adapts and who panics. Tempo decides who controls the fight. The Ford class was designed to apply pressure without giving the enemy time to breathe. Yes, the Ford can exceed 30 knots, which is impressive for a ship of that size. Nuclear power allows long operations without stopping for fuel. But speed is not the key advantage. In real conflict, carriers are not racing across the ocean like sports boats. They position themselves. They choose operating zones. Then they begin cycling aircraft again and again. That is where older carriers started to reveal their limits. Previous carrier classes were not built for non-stop high-tempo air operations that future wars may demand. The Ford class was built to change that reality. From the first day of design, Sortie Generation was treated as a main requirement, not a side detail. That forced the Navy to rethink the entire flow of operations: how aircraft move, how weapons move, how sailors move, how power is distributed across the ship. The Ford class produces much more electrical power than the carriers before it. That extra power is not just for comfort. It supports systems meant to reduce delays across the ship. More power allows more automation. More automation means fewer manpower bottlenecks, and fewer bottlenecks means more aircraft in the sky over time. This is where the cost begins to make more sense. People compare the Ford class to carriers from other nations, and the gap looks extreme. Many countries operate smaller ships. Most use conventional engines. Most do not aim for the same flight tempo. Some navies can only launch a few aircraft at a time. Others use ski jump ramps, which limit aircraft weight and payload. Even the most capable non-US carriers are not meant to sustain the type of operations the Ford class is designed for, and that is not an insult. Their goals are different. Their budgets are different. Their doctrine accepts limits. the U.S. Navy refuses to accept. That comparison matters because the Ford-class is not just a ship. It is a message. It shows how the United States expects future wars to unfold. In the Pacific, distance is a weapon. Bases are spread far apart. Resupply windows are narrow. Aircraft have long flight times. Any delay multiplies. In that environment, a carrier that can regenerate aircraft faster than the enemy can respond gains a massive advantage. This advantage is quiet. It does not show up as a single blast. It appears when aircraft keep coming even after the enemy expects a pause. It appears when defenses face constant pressure instead of shortwaves. It appears when pilots land, reload, launch again, while the opponent is still trying to fix damage from the last strike. This is why the Ford-class secret weapon can be easy to miss. It takes hours of sustained operations before you see the full effect. The Navy understands this, which is why it speaks carefully in public. If the Navy promises exact sortie numbers, critics will hunt for failure, and the Ford program has already had plenty of problems. Emails launches, weapon elevators, integration issues. Some systems took longer than expected to work properly. These issues matter, and in wartime they will matter even more. No ship is perfect. No system performs exactly like brochures claim once combat stress begins. But even harsh critics admit one key point. The Ford-class is a real attempt to change how carriers fight, not just how they look. It is meant to make sustained air power normal, not rare. And that shift affects far more than the ship itself. It changes how many carriers the Navy needs to keep global presence. It affects how long a carrier can stay on station without relief. It shapes how enemies calculate risk. It even shapes how allies view sea power. All of that comes from something that does not fire a shot. The Gerald R. Ford can carry around 90 aircraft, but its true strength is not the number of jets on board. It is how quickly it can turn those jets into constant pressure, again and again. And the ship's improvements do not stop there. Every carrier lives or dies based on the flow of people, fuel, weapons, and aircraft through an extremely crowded space. The flight deck looks huge. In reality, it is one of the most packed workplaces on Earth. Every movement must be planned. Mistakes waste time, and wasted time kills rhythm. Older carriers accepted bottlenecks. Steam catapults controlled launch speed. Elevators had limits. Island placement reflected old design thinking. When the system ran perfectly, everything worked. When it didn't, the tempo collapsed. And once the tempo collapsed, recovering was difficult. The Ford-class was built by people tired of accepting that. Instead of squeezing more labor from crews, the Navy focused on removing friction from the process. The result is a carrier that operates less like a traditional warship and more like a high-output industrial machine. The most visible change is the move away from steam catapults. The Ford-class uses the electromagnetic aircraft launch system, EMALS. Many people talk about EMALS like it is just fancy tech. Linear motors, smooth control, high precision. And sure, that is part of it. But the real goal is speed, efficiency, and reliability over long cycles. Recovering aircraft is another place carriers lose time. Landing patterns stack up. Jets wait overhead. Deck crews fight to clear space. Small delays snowball. The Ford-class attacks this by changing deck flow. The island was moved farther back. That sounds minor, but it creates more usable space and improves traffic patterns between the landing area, parking zones, and catapults. Below deck, the changes are even bigger. Moving weapons has always been slow. Bombs and missiles are heavy and dangerous. The Ford-class introduced new advanced weapons elevators designed to lift ordnance faster and with less delay. These elevators were expected to become one of the biggest reasons the carrier can maintain high tempo. And that matters because launch speed means nothing if weapons cannot keep up. Automation also matters. The Ford-class runs with fewer sailors than older carriers. Even though the ship is larger and more complex, it was designed to require fewer hands, not by pushing people harder, but by building systems that are easier to operate and maintain. All these changes point in one direction: faster launches, faster recoveries, faster weapon handling, fewer pauses between steps. There is no single dramatic moment when the ship reveals its real advantage. Instead, the advantage builds quietly, hour by hour. This is why the $13 billion price tag looks different depending on what you imagine. If you picture a giant ship just floating at sea, the cost seems insane. But if you picture a ship designed to deliver non-stop combat air power for decades, the math changes. Many nations operate carriers as symbols, as flags on the ocean. They do not fly constant combat cycles. That is not failure. That is strategy. The U.S. expects its carriers to act like mobile air bases, able to fight far from home for long periods. The Ford-class pushes that idea further than any carrier before it, because once a carrier slows down, it becomes predictable. Once it becomes predictable, it becomes easier to manage. Once it becomes manageable, its deterrence weakens. The Ford-class exists to delay that moment as long as possible. It does not guarantee victory. No ship can. It does not erase risk. Nothing does. What it does is buy time. And in modern naval warfare, time is the one resource everyone is trying to steal from everyone else. To understand why this carrier matters, you must stop thinking of it as a ship and start thinking of it as a signal. So let me ask you something. If you were building the next generation of aircraft carriers, would you spend money on flashy spectacle or on endurance? Would you chase what looks impressive or what keeps pressure on the enemy day after day? Drop your thoughts below. I read them all. And if you want to support the channel and help us keep digging into real naval stories like this, you can join the fleet by clicking the join button. It helps us go deeper without watering anything down. Thanks for watching. More stories are coming soon. I'll see you in the next one.